everybody, and welcome to Conversations About Change, a series of conversations that we've been holding at Arts Philadelphia about how, working together, we and our partners envision creating changes that will improve the lives and experiences of people living with dementia and their care partners in the communities that we serve. My name is Susan Schifrin. I am the founder and director of Arts Philadelphia. And this series is marking 10 years of Arts Philadelphia, all made possible, quite frankly, by collaboration with our community and arts and healthcare partners since 2013. And speaking of partners since 2013, it's my great pleasure to introduce today Felicia Greenfield, who is the executive director of the Penn Memory Center, also a licensed clinical social worker, and a longtime partner of Arts Philadelphia. Welcome, Felicia. Thanks so much for being here.
Hi, Susan. Thanks for having me today.
My great pleasure. So just before we get started, my conversation today with Felicia is part one of a two-part conversation with colleagues from Penn Memory Center. Jason Karlawish, the co-director of the Penn Memory Center, will be my guest in part two of this conversation. So meanwhile, Felicia, can you start us off by talking a little bit about your professional and, if relevant, personal relationship experiences with dementia?
Sure. I'll start with my personal experiences because I think it is what led to my professional experiences. So, back in high school, I always kind of had an appreciation and affinity for older adults. I volunteered at a nursing home when I was in high school. I used to go after school to visit two people I was assigned to, and one of those people had some form of dementia. I'm not really sure about the specifics, but I used to spend time with him and look through photo albums, and I just found those interactions really meaningful to me. And then a little bit later, my father's mother went on to develop signs of Alzheimer's disease. Back in those days, they called it senility or just blanket, dementia. But she pretty much, looking back, had classic signs of Alzheimer's disease. And eventually she and my grandfather moved into my father's house, and my father and stepmother were their primary caregivers, but I was kind of in the background. We cared for her at home until she died. And then right after that, my grandfather started showing signs of dementia. But his were more behavioral, and he was too difficult to care for in the home. So our family had to make the difficult decision to place him in a long-term care facility. And then more recently, my mother's partner of over 30 years was diagnosed with early stage Alzheimer's disease. So I'm finding myself in a supportive role to her in her new caregiving role, from a distance. But I think that my grandparents' illness was partially what led me to kind of gravitate towards the Memory Center. And when I finished my master's in social work, I was given the opportunity to develop a social work program supporting patients and caregivers at the Memory Center. And I've been doing that primarily through caregiver coaching and counseling since 2008.
So that is quite an extensive set of experiences that have informed where you are today. It's interesting to me that you've had a long relationship with Penn Memory Center that has evolved, so that you are now the executive director of the Memory Center. And somewhere along the line, around 2013, I had the good fortune to be introduced to Penn Memory Center by an undergraduate at Penn who connected me with all of you. And, I could speak volumes about why Arts Philadelphia wanted to connect with the Penn Memory Center, but could you talk a little bit about, from your perspective, why you were interested in connecting with this little tiny nascent organization called Arts Philly?
Of course. So, back in 2013, our program was still developing. And it was really only me. I was the only full-time social worker. And I think I just started accepting interns from Penn. And so I was looking for any kind of community-based partnerships that I could collaborate with. And I remember meeting you, and I don't remember the pathway. I don't remember the introduction, but I remember sitting in a conference room with you back in 2013 with a few other faculty and staff around the table, just kind of getting to know one another. I think you had just come from Boston. Is that right?
Actually, I think what you might be thinking of is that we were, in our early years, we were under the umbrella
Got it.
of Artists for Alzheimer's, acronym ARTS, which was based in Boston.
Okay. Okay. And then you were starting Arts Philadelphia here.
That's right.
Okay. I remembered a Boston connection.
There you go.
But I remember sitting around that table kind of brainstorming, and it became clear to me that there was an unmet need in the community for people with dementia and their care partners to engage with the arts. And I think we kind of bounced around some ideas, and you took it from there, and here we are today.
Well, that's very generous of you. I think, what I remember is that, believing, I think, as I firmly do, that we need to be cautious and not jump blithely into the unknown when it comes to providing programs for people living with dementia and their care partners, because frankly, they're a sensitive population. And, my joke is that whereas I'm as a museum educator and as an educator working with college students, I was always prepared to experiment blithely with students on the assumption that the worst that could happen is if we experimented with a program that really just didn't meet their expectations, I would then have to find other ways to bring them back into the museum. I say that somewhat jokingly, but as the care partner to my mother, and as someone who knew that people living with dementia and their families too often experience the outward effects of stigma when taking those first steps into the public, I didn't want to be an organization that could cause any kind of harm. And I remember you and Scott Reed coming to observe one of our programs before you felt comfortable recommending it to Penn Memory Center clients. And that just, first of all, the fact that you took the time to do that, and secondly, that that you showed that level of seriousness has always been something I've remembered. So I guess you talked about the fact that when we met, you were essentially a team of one, and I was more or less a team of one. And my goodness, look at Penn Memory Center now.
Right.
So, well, so can we talk a little bit about the ways in which Penn Memory Center has grown and, I would say, evolved, not a little bit because of your leadership, and how our partnership has changed as a result of that?
Yeah, sure. So yes, I am protective of our families and want to, what is very important to me is that anything that we are delivering is what I would consider a high level of quality care. And so I guess, you know, I was a team of one until about 2016. In 2016, I was the recipient of a large philanthropic gift. And that gift allowed me to hire a second social worker, and that is Allison Lynn. And Allison's been my kind of right hand ever since. And so Allison and I decided that the way that we wanted to deliver care was a combination of individual work with primarily care partners of our patients, sometimes with patients themselves, um, as well as group work and programs. And so um, we have a number of art art-based programs. One of the ones that I'm thinking of primarily is our Memory Cafe. And another intern, who was an intern with Allison in 2016, kind of brought that idea to the table. And the Memory Cafe is designed to be not just a support group or something like that, but really a way to reduce stigma by bringing people with dementia and their care partners into kind of a safe space where they're not identified as patient or care partner. You would not even necessarily know if you were to enter a Memory Cafe. And we keep it light, we keep it fun. But somewhere along the lines, we realized that there was something missing, and that was like a cultural kind of artistic, creative performance piece. And so we started to add those pieces in. And you were one of our presenters at one of our memory cafes. And and ever since you launched Arts, even as we continue to grow our own programs, you've been one of the most important referral partners, because what I found was that each time a family that we referred to you went to you, they fell in love. And the feedback was just like overwhelmingly like positive. And so one of the ways that we continued to work together was we wanted to promote all of your programs. And so I hope it's still happening, but there is a time where we were promoting on our website all of the arts programs, and it kind of started to feel like an ancillary kind of supplemental hub to what we were doing in-house. We felt very safe and comfortable referring to you. It's been really a gift, a gem to my team and I. We're now a team of 5 to be able to refer to you, because for our patients, just having a way to express themselves in kind of a safe, non-judgmental way, and giving people opportunities to connect meaningful with other people who have memory impairments. It's like really, we can't do that necessarily in our center, but we can do that through programs like Arts. And it's also a great way for caregivers who are feeling maybe socially isolated, a way to connect and bond with others over art. So it's just been a great partnership.
Well, and I will say, I don't know how many people know that one of the primary ways in which people come to us is through referrals. And our first cohort of participants at our first programs in 2014, with one exception, all came through you. for which I'm eternally grateful. And, word of mouth has continued that. And also as you say, the referrals, initially by you and your fellow social workers, but also more recently through some of the docs at Penn Memory Center as well, which is really wonderful. In your roles at Penn Memory Center, at least from the perspective of someone outside the Penn Memory Center, you have been a staunch advocate for the kind of humanistic social and creative ways in which people living with dementia and their care partners can rediscover quality of life. And you have done this at a center that is known for its research relating to that elusive cure, but also pharmacological treatments of various kinds. And as I have watched the evolution of Penn Memory Center's kind of philosophy, I've seen that humanistic approach that you brought become stronger and stronger. So as you now ED of Penn Memory Center, as you think about the kinds of changes that in 2023 are needed, whether within the medical profession, whether within our societal responses to people living with these chronic illnesses, what kinds of changes do you think we need to be focusing on?
So many.
Hmm.
So many changes. But one thing that comes to mind is that we've been hearing in the media a lot lately about the negative effects of social isolation, right, on everyone. But I think that families living with dementia experience social isolation significantly worse than the general population. Many people don't understand dementia. They don't understand the behaviors that people with dementia can have, and sometimes it scares them. Sometimes it's so scary that family members or best friends stop coming around, and that's devastating to the people, especially to both the person living with dementia and the caregiver. Most of my work is with caregivers, and so I'm kind of speaking through that lens. And I think that we need to reduce stigma and find ways to minimize isolation in this particular community. And one way to do that is to find ways to kind of show people with dementia living in the world in public spaces that are safe and supportive to them, right? So, I feel like more programs that are accessible and meaningful. And when I say accessible, I think accessible to somebody who has, who has dementia, and sometimes living in kind of a fact-based, reality-based kind of world isn't accessible for people with dementia, but the arts are. So when people with dementia are engaged, when they can access something that is meaningful to them, and they can speak to that, and then they tend to do better. They rise to the occasion, if you will. So in my experience, people with dementia respond very well to the arts, whether it's visual art, music is very powerful, as well as performance. And I think that offering more opportunities for folks to engage and express themselves in public spaces will ultimately reduce stigma and show the general population that people with dementia are people first and that they should always be treated with the same dignity and respect as anyone else.
Absolutely. Here, here. Um, so one of the, I'm going off script here. One of the things that I've been thinking about a lot recently, and I wonder if you think about it as well, is our organization's missions to disrupt the effects of stigma, to bring people back from isolation that has been thrust upon them, essentially, and to do so in a way that helps to educate the wider community about what you've just said, which is so critical, that people are people. And a person with a chronic illness is a person first. Having said that, we also know from years of practice and years of research that programs specifically tailored to creating spaces in which people living with dementia and their care partners can feel that no explanation is needed, that they are received as the people they are, and that there's a certain comfort in knowing that other people in the room may be experiencing similar situations. So we have a bit of a dichotomy. We want not to further ghettoize people living with dementia and their families. And we also want to create spaces that are not just accepting of them, but crafted for them, bespoke spaces. So are there ways at the Penn Memory Center in which you are thinking about creating programs that very intentionally bring people living with dementia and their families or friends or care partners together with people who have no experience with dementia? And is that something that organizations like ours should also be thinking about as we think about the kinds of changes that we want to see happen? I have no answer myself, I will just say, but it's something I've been thinking about a lot.
No, I think about it a lot too. And I think about, I don't have any answers either. And I don't, and I'm not actively working on anything, but I do think about the ways in which people with dementia interact with different systems and how those systems are not necessarily educated or prepared to respond to people with dementia. And so I think about healthcare systems and, for example, we require or like really strongly suggest that somebody comes to the doctor's visit with the person with dementia. Not all practices will do that. Not all medical practices will even speak to somebody who's not, the patient. And so there's a dilemma there and kind of a disconnect because somebody who doesn't have the capacity necessarily to retain what the doctor's telling them, so medical systems, police systems, law enforcement systems, all kinds of systems that don't understand and interact with this population. There's room for very, very bad things to happen, things to go very wrong. And so I kind of fantasize about how to educate different systems about dementia and how to interact with somebody who may be experiencing dementia. I think people are getting there. I think that there is more awareness. I think we can do better and be a society that that recognizes. And I don't think that I think that a lot of the stigma stems really from fear. And so I think, I don't think there's necessarily anything bad about the people who, I think it's just, so kind of showing people that it's not scary, that it's okay, but I don't, yes, I think about it. I don't have any solutions.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree with you completely. I think um somewhat akin to the not in my backyard phenomenon, when
Yes.
there's a recovery facility or something that is in a neighborhood and people get scared. Not in my backyard. I think there's something akin to that in relation to this set of frightening illnesses. But I think distinguishing between the illnesses and the people who happen to live with them is the key. And uh, I think more and more that as you pointed out, police, EMTs, you know, um, receptionists at any kind of business. I think that given the proper or given access to tools to help them understand, I don't believe it's ill intent that promotes stigma. I think it's fear, as you said.
Yeah.
Um,
And a lot of following of protocol. Another system I'm thinking of now are
yes,
like financial institutions, right? And and making care partners jump through many, 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 many hoops to protect assets that are potentially in jeopardy. So I think it's a matter of the protocols need to be changed to accommodate families living with dementia.
absolutely. And so you know, we can talk about the changes that we hope to make within and through our organizations, but we're also talking about the need for um, much more profound systemic change, which, I believe strongly that collaborations and partnerships among organizations and between organizations like ours are at least the beginning of something more systemic. Felicia, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you want to talk about in relation to the work you're doing at Penn Memory Center, the work we're doing together? Anything you'd like to bring up?
I just think that, person-centered care and kind of connection are a mission, I guess, or a vision that you and I share, that our organizations share. And so I think that our organizations are a perfect match. I know that when I refer a family to you, they're going to be welcomed and they're going to be treated with dignity, respect, and kindness. They're going to be engaged in meaningful ways. And they might even have some fun. And, sometimes people say to me, I don't know. It seems like so much work to get them up and out and to go to a program like that, and they're not going to remember it anyway. So, what's the point? And I don't, I give a little pushback to that because, we all know that even though a person might not remember what they did, they're gonna remember the way they feel. That kind of emotional feeling is going to remain. So if they're out there and doing something other than, if they're engaged in meaningful kind of creative ways, they're gonna probably feel better, and then that's going to translate into, better functioning. And so I don't know, I just thought I would share that.
Well, and thank you. And yeah, I mean, when I introduce our programs, the first thing that I say is we're here to have fun. And if we don't, I need you to tell me I've done a lousy job. So, joy, fun,
Yeah.
laughter are not things that our community at large associate with the thing called dementia. So I want to thank you for almost 10 years of partnering with us and say that it's also really good for us to know that when we refer, as we do, when we refer prospective patients to the docs at Penn Memory Center, we know how thoughtful and embracing an approach they're going to meet with. So thank you so much for engaging in this mutual admiration society with me.
Congratulations on 10 years.
Thank you, Felicia. And may Penn Memory Center have many more.
Likewise to Arts Philadelphia, Susan.